Welcome. I've got a little tutorial on how I restored my handles on my classic BMW, and I want to show you how you can too. We just have a few things we'll go over, and let's get started. So first of all, we're looking for any chips or dings. We need to sand those all the way down, and a lot of the times you need thicker sandpaper or more aggressive, like 220. And then finish it off with 320, and then at the very end, after you've sanded through that, use a maroon pad. And you could just go from the 320 if you don't have maroon pad, but the maroon pad just leaves a nice finish that's similar to about a 400 grit. And really you're just looking for a nice even grit pattern all over the paint that will allow the paint to stick to it. And you can see on this one there was some really thick, dense dings in the paint. It wasn't actually in the aluminum, but I just had to sand through and feather out those dings with a little bit heavier sandpaper. And don't worry about going all the way down to the metal. We're going to put enough paint on this that it won't matter in the end. But as you can see, some of these that have sat in a side where it was in more sun and got more road use, they definitely needed a little more sanding with the 220 and then eventually 320. So don't worry about going too deep. You still want to leave some paint on there if it's still in good condition, but just make sure that the paint is completely matte with that 320 the whole time right before you're painting. And make sure the edges and like the little nooks and crannies have all been rubbed with that pad and or 320. You can use the side of the pad or work around the edges with just a little stick or something with the pad on it to try to push into those little edges, but overall it just needs to be sanded. The next thing is using air duster. You don't have to do this step, you could just wipe it off with a towel, but it's nice. It just gets the dust off from your sanding. You can just spray it off. If you have compressed air, that works too. Even just a cloth would work as well. You can see it just knocks that dust off. And then the next step is using Prep-All, or you could use acetone or isopropyl alcohol. Just something solvent based to clean these off. Just take a rag, spray them down with that Prep-All, and then we're ready to paint. This TranStar paint is a high quality automotive grade paint that I got from my local paint supply, and it is a trim black. It's kind of a satin that matches a lot of other things on the car exterior wise from this time frame. You could just go through, wipe them down with the Prep-All. This stuff is really nice. It gets any of the grease and waxes off that you would potentially have from your hands. Make sure you're using gloves when you're doing this, not only because you don't want the chemicals all over your hands, but it keeps your waxes and greases from your hands getting back on it before you paint. Anything you do with painting is absolutely crucial that you have a good prepared surface that is clean and the paint can stick to. So that's why we sand before we paint and then use alcohol or a Prep-All on those. Now we're just going to hang them with some steel wire up from the rafters and go ahead and give them a nice spray. I would do a solid 3 to 4 coats on these. Give them 10 minutes between each coat to flash off. That just means that the chemicals in the paint have been able to exit the paint. They dry off basically, so make sure you let them dry pretty well, and you're in a well ventilated area. This stuff is pretty strong paint. It's a little more industrial than your typical paints that you would get from the hardware store. So from here on out, there's just a few more coats and we'll throw them back on. Enjoy. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and becoming a member. We'll get more content similar to this coming in the future that you don't want to miss out. Thank you.